Hey, David, how you doing?
Hey, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. We're here at the Spiritual Reflections again. It's Wednesday, February the 11th, 2026, and I guess you and I are we've dug out of the snow. You had it and lost it pretty fast, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Now people are out in shorts. Yesterday it was so warm here. So,
Yeah, I heard you had the 70s and we were in the 60s, so it was really awesome. It's nice to have
yeah,
this break. Well,
absolutely.
I know that you're teaching a class at 11 a.m. every Wednesday at heartlightcharlotte.org, and you're moving into your third week. And you're talking about aligning with your energy blueprint. And part of the energy that we have and that we place a lot of our energy on is the stories we tell ourselves.
Yes, that's the lessons that we're on. This is the third week for that, and this week is going to be listening and being aware of the different stories in our head that we tell ourselves. I really see two stories kind of going on with all of us, and that's the story of our creation and the story of our formation. The story of
Mm,
our creation is our spiritual story, who we are spiritually, who we've been created to be as
okay.
whole created beings. But another story starts forming when we start taking information, or I should say sometimes misinformation from outside of ourselves, from family, culture, even religion itself can give us misinformation. And from that, we build a different story in our head. So we're going to have two voices in our head all the time. So the idea is to merge those voices together into a more spiritual, positive outlook for ourselves.
Well, one of the stories that I had that was given to me by family and my life experience was with my dad, who was an alcoholic for most of my childhood up until I was about 14 or 15. I experienced that with him, and it was dumped into my lap that I was going to carry that same curse. It was going to become part. It's part of who I am. You had the propensity, and so part of my life path, because of those beliefs that were formed as a result of that story I was given, was the experience of alcoholism and drug abuse.
Hmm.
And I went through that for about 15 years, living that life and that experience. But then I finally, through my spiritual research, I always had that dual consciousness, my spiritual self and my humanity, but I always felt that higher self was always speaking to me that there's a way out of this. And I did find my way of refocusing my energy and creating a new blueprint as I go forward. That kind of the
Uh,
thing you're talking about.
oh, exactly. It reminds me of the sins of the father are visited on the four generations and beyond. So
Yeah.
that tells me that the story that we most believe and rehearse inside of ourselves even affects our DNA, they're finding out. Changes and rearranges it to that story. So if we're telling a story like you're saying that my parents did this and my dad did that and probably I'm going to do that, that the old idea of the word made flesh
Yes.
means the story even becomes a part of our cellular makeup, how we shape our bodies, how we shape our, not just our lives, but our whole physicality is affected by that. So it's very important that we really work on, well, these voices in our head. I want to say that really, coming from what I call a Course in Miracles principle, for those that might know that, is the fact that these two things cannot be two realities. In other words, the voice of our humanity that we've learned from outside, and the voice of our inner spiritual self, one of those is real and one of them isn't. So we're going to say the one of our creation and spirituality is the real voice, and the other one is the made up voice that we've made up and is
Yes.
not real. So, but the thing is, whether something's real or not real, if we believe it and transfer power to it, then it becomes powerful into our lives.
Yeah. Well, it became a whole identity, for me for a while. Going out to clubs and pubs and sitting with people and telling, myself that I, needed this social lubricant to be able to be okay, in the world and okay with myself. And it just became a whole big box of beliefs that I had to sift through and decide that, this is no longer who I am.
That's good. I think identity is so much. I think it's something that I call the truth with a capital T of who we are. I love the quotes that says, "I am the truth. I
Hmm.
am the way. I am the bread which came down from heaven." There's something attached to that I am identity that is the greater identity of the ego or pseudo self that we made up about ourselves. It's just a made up story. And
Yeah.
we can change that if we really understand what's happening. Just an example, let's say somebody goes around and saying, "Oh, I made a mistake."
Hmm.
Now that's one story, but you can change that story to what can I learn? Do you
Right.
feel the shift there?
Right.
Or I'm tomorrow I'll do it differently instead of saying I made a mistake. Or I'm growing and getting better from this experience that I had. You feel the shift from the story of I made a mistake, I've done a bad thing to I'm
Yes.
doing something that is going to further my evolution and my growth in my life. We could say this multiplies energy through my curiosity and compassion. And so we could just tell a different story. And that's what I'd like to say to our listeners today is that you have the power to choose again, to make a different choice.
Yeah, we can, and that I made a mistake is kind of like the shame and blame idea. You're shaming, you're blaming yourself, and that really dampens and puts a wet blanket on your ability to manifest something other than what you're experiencing. But as you're saying, if I can take my energy and flow it through a new idea, that what am I learning from this experience? Become really curious about it, and I ended up eventually in part of my process finding it really interesting the way I would find my consciousness working with regard to alcoholism and drug use and my need and perceived need versus real need. And really, I didn't need any of it
Mhm.
uh, to be okay.
So my story was not yours. I didn't have that idea of alcoholism and all of that in my family, but I had a religious story.
Yes.
Being raised in a very religious family, my aunt being my pastor, my uncle being the overseer of the religion I was born in. That's the story I heard from in the womb, actually.
Yeah.
Being taken to all these church meetings and everything. And of course, that story was based on the fact that something's wrong with me. I'm born a sinner. I'm born in sin. That's the story that they reinforced in me. Something's wrong with me. I'm broken and I need to be fixed. And I remember my starting my spiritual path, the years, almost decades that I spent trying to fix myself and to be good enough for God or whoever to accept me. And
Uh-huh.
then I heard a different story. I don't remember. It was from a young minister that, well, she wasn't young, but she was a minister that came to my church and had a whole different story about we're spiritually created and therefore we could not sin, and that sin was a made up dogma and doctrine. And I thought, wow, I like that story. That feels good to me. So I started at that point another story in me. And I'm still creating that other story in me all the time by the new knowledge and information that comes from spiritual meditation, contemplation, and research.
Yeah, and I think we can actually feel if the story is appropriate for us or not. If it's heavy and we're feeling it in our body as a weight and kind of a a holding back of our energy. I know my old story. I kept telling it over and over and over again, and this is who I am. In the 12-step meetings, I would say I am this, and knowing in my higher self that no, this isn't who I am. This is just how I'm behaving.
Here you go. Yes, I
You
like
know what
that.
I'm saying? This is just what
Mhm.
I'm doing, and I can do something different. I can
Mhm.
use my energy, my life force energy in a different way. So I finally figured out that once I got tired of my story, I think I was close to being healed because I'm ready for a new one.
And I think there's those out there who are tired of the story that they've been
Yes.
telling themselves. You know, one of the teachings I'm going to do today, we're going to ask people to think about someone they love, a child or a grandchild, and how you talk to that grandchild. Would you talk that way to yourself?
That's
You know, would
awesome.
you, yeah, would you say those things to yourself that you would say to something you love outside of yourself? And we're that way. We're so easy to love others and tell them a good story, but in our own mind, we tell a different story about ourselves. So
Yes.
it's an interesting thing. And I do think that in my case, religion just did not give me the right story that fit my spiritual desire to know, you know,
Yes.
truth for me.
Well, and that's what the Academy is for. You shared with us at the Academy for Spiritual Awakening, and people can connect to that and do free samples of your teaching if they go to davidhulse.com, and they can find the tools that you shared with us to help free ourselves up and live and become the spiritual beings that we want to be. We can seek there, we can explore there, and we can awaken all at davidhulse.com.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you so much, Randall. It's good to be with you again this morning and to all of any of our listeners that are with us today.
Right. See you next time, everybody.